Not only is it getting really gross and dirty.
What is the piece of tape being compared to, though?
Women.
Oh,
Yes.
They're comparing the piece of tape to like.
That's a real thing.
A real female.
That does happen.
Hi, I'm Aaron Raw, and you're watching Atheist Edge.
Okay. Hey, welcome to Atheist Edge. I'm TJ.
I'm Courtney.
This is Courtney. Here talking with Courtney.
Yeah.
Talking about human sexuality. We're having a conversation. Just wanted to get her thoughts on a topic that I think a lot of probably atheists probably care about and have some opinion on is abstinence only sex ed.
Yeah.
That's kind of a phenomenon here in the South a
Oh,
lot.
yeah.
And
so
what
across
are your
the US.
thoughts on that? Yeah. I think it is
Well,
too.
I mean, what's scary about it is that it's not. I think it was only in like 5 or 6 states that it has to be actually factually accurate, as opposed to all 52. And that's scary. But what that means is what they're not being factually accurate about is about rates of STDs, and they kind of characterize STDs as being something that's like a definite that's going to happen, instead of something that you can account for and be safe about. But also they have this this very one-sided argument of sex being something that only should happen within the context of marriage, which would be fine if they couple it with, other things, because what it is it's taking this topic that a lot of people are very varied on and should be, and it's making it just, this is the only way to go about this thing.
Right.
And this is the only thing that's okay. And there have been many videos about, people yelling at kids that just don't do this. It's like, just say no about, like, as if it's something about drugs or something. And so it focuses on just don't talk about it, and they don't do any actual education on contraception. They don't talk about any of that. If kids ask question about it, they sort of just avoid it. And that's what's really scary, is that it doesn't ensure that people aren't going to have sex, because they still do.
Yeah, we're
statistically.
human.
Yeah, and statistically it doesn't prevent anything at all. But the only thing it does ensure is that when that does happen, you have a lot of misinformation. And so it's statistically, and this has been well documented as well, that the rate of teen pregnancy and STDs is higher in programs that are abstinence only versus having no program at all.
So it's it's what you're saying then is if they're not telling them anything about sex, they're still in better shape than when they're told not to have sex.
Right. And it's really
wow,
sad.
That's.
But and then the other there's a whole nother side of it Jim, he's like another. Anyway, a whole other side of it is this just, it's awful. So it focuses on women being kind of damaged by sex before marriage, and they talk about being compared to a shoe, or being compared to.
So if a woman's indiscreet, it's much worse.
Right, and they don't even. I don't think they even address the male side of it. But they do talk about, men, don't be tempted by women who want to have sex with you.
Okay,
like, if somebody wants to have sex with you, run. Like, it's just, it's insane.
Michelle, what are these?
My sneakers?
But Michelle, what is this? It looks like the entire football team has been in these things. I mean...
I made them all wear socks.
Socks? Michelle, socks don't protect my heart. You can still get foot fungus with socks. I mean, but, I saved my shoes for you. What happened?
Like you're just supposed to, turn that, just flip a switch and turn it off.
But the reason that you want to run is because that means all of these characteristics about that person. That means that this person is dangerous and diseased and awful. Yeah. Okay. And so it isn't about, run because you shouldn't be having sex at all. It's run from this person because they're propositioning you and that means
Sounds
all
like
these
such a
characteristics
dirty
about
word,
those things.
proposition,
I know,
right? Yeah.
and so there's no room for two people are mature enough and can handle this stuff, and they just need information about how to
Yeah.
go about it safely.
Yeah.
There's no room for that.
Right.
There's no room for people just being who they want to be and doing what they want to do in a safe and responsible way, like human beings do. But it's really terrible. But so they'll take a piece of tape and stick it to one guy and stick it to another guy and stick it to another guy, and they're like, it's gonna eventually lose its
Stickiness,
yeah.
yeah.
Like, oh
They're-
my
wait,
God! Like,
so
not only is it getting really
What is
gross
the
and
piece
dirty,
of tape being compared to, though?
women.
Oh,
Yes.
They're comparing the piece of tape to like
That's a real
A
thing.
real female.
That does happen. That happened. Yeah.
and they're really saying this is analogous.
Exactly.
Like,
And there was a woman who was she was raped in, I think it was college or something, and she gave a talk, and she said that when she was in school they did the tape thing, and after she was attacked, that's what she was thinking about. She felt like she was going to be damaged and dirty in some way, and it was just, oh my God, like it's adding a whole other just a terrible thing to worry about when you're in that situation of recovery from something like that. Like, that's
So-
already so traumatic.
Yeah. Well, it
Um,
also sounds like you're
it's
saying
unnecessary.
too that not only are there actual physical and physiological like pitfalls associated, but also can generate neuroses within. You think that it can actually make people abnormal in
What?
regards to sexuality, like mentally.
What do you mean?
Like, do you think it can? What I'm trying to say is, yeah, you can get STEs, you can get pregnant when you're not ready to have a child.
Right.
Those kinds of things are like physically manifested things.
Yeah.
Do you think that also maybe it has some sort of effect on the developing brain of an adolescent, where it's
I
like
don't
you
know.
get these like
Well, it's just
weird
statistically
ideas about sexuality and stuff?
Well, yeah. I
and-
mean, if they don't address any of this stuff, and they also don't address the idea of consent either.
maybe that's a problem too.
That's a major problem, because
Yeah.
you're dealing with something that's that does need to be talked about. So kids are leaving high school and going into college, and they have no idea how to establish that or what that looks like, and so you get these problems with people feeling victimized when it's
Yeah.
just it's
Well,
a
it
whole
objectifies
terrible
women, it seems like.
terrible situation. Yeah, it definitely like there was a video about it was like a wedding night, and this guy gets this girl's gym shoes out of like a bag or something, and they're like really dirty, and he's like, oh, it looks like the whole football team has been in here, and it's like, and she's like, well, I made them wear socks, and it was just like, oh my God, like, oh my God.
These like really strange
Yeah,
metaphors that
it's
they're
so
using
nuts.
to describe these things.
And he was like, socks don't prevent, what was it, like athlete's foot or something? Like, it
Yeah.
was just so stupid. Like,
Why don't you just like talk about the actual like body parts? that
I
are
know,
involved? You
but
what I mean?
well,
Wouldn't
not only
wouldn't
that,
be
but
better?
but that's the comparison that's
Right,
made
yeah.
for women, and it's just, it's so sad.
It seems rather bizarre. Do you think that it actually is a? I couldn't even. I can't imagine what kind of secular program would teach things like that. Do you think it's necessarily related to religious groups?
Well, a secular program would probably teach comprehensive sex ed,
Right,
which is, they focus on, don't do this until you're ready, don't pressure anyone, don't let anybody pressure you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do begin this is what you need to know about it, and this is
Yeah.
important to know, and these are some things to consider. And so that's it, and that's
Yeah.
all you really need to do. And I don't really understand why there has to be this entire stigma and sexism and complex that you create, that there's this very clear message of do not do this, and
Right.
you are bad
It's
if you do this.
prescriptive.
It's a very
Yeah.
clear message about marriage, about this is the only context where this is appropriate, and
yeah.
and so when you're dealing with something that's really nuanced and really individual, it needs to be something that because I think, I mean, I've heard this before too, that that many people are ready to have sex before they're ready to get married. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very big,
Yeah.
it's two separate things, and to put them together, it really only happens in a religious context, where there's only one way to do that for everyone.
Right.
There's a lot of people who that's what they want to do, and that's absolutely wonderful for them, and that's totally fine. But you do what's comfortable for you, and if you're religious, and as an adult, if that's who you want to be, then that's absolutely fine. But to impose that on a public school,
What,
to
you have a
impose
captive
that,
audience.
yeah, to impose that in something that's supposed to be a science class, supposed to be
Yeah.
fact based. But Jim was telling me that these places, a lot of his daughter was in an abstinence only program, and the people teaching the class, quote unquote, was a
Teaching, yeah, if you call
was
that
a
teaching.
religious organization.
Right,
It
yeah.
was not a science class. It was not. Education is a place for education.
Right.
It's
It
not for
implies that there are
indoctrination. It's not for dogma. It's
Yeah.
not for belief.
Religious
it's for
opinions
something-
don't have any
exactly.
place.
It's a place for arguing opinions. It's a place for thinking for yourself and learning how to critically think.
I
And it's
see.
not
Okay.
a place for just this is who you should be. This is what you should do, and you should not have any questions. If you have any questions, you're bad.
Yeah.
And it's really, really terrible.
Well, I mean, I think that's a running theme on pretty much all religion. And
Well, yeah, I
dogma,
mean,
to
yeah,
begin
doubt
with, is-
doubt is something
it's
scary.
bad.
Doubt
And-
is something to be
yeah.
overcome, not something
It's
to,
not
to
beau-
raise
the
questions.
beautiful thing that it's supposed to be. Yeah.
I know, yeah, doubt is something that's absolutely necessary, especially in a democracy.
Well, Descartes said, we should, if you're a rational thinking person, you should doubt as far as possible everything.
Yeah.
Throughout your life. I mean, that gets you to more truth. That way, more
Exactly,
truth, more
and that's
beauty,
the
more-
point. Like, being a skeptical person isn't for the point of just being like a difficult person that doesn't want to accept
Yeah.
anything and just wants to argue everything. It's about
That's
you know,
cynicism more.
yeah, it's about
Skepticism isn't cynicism.
right,
Yeah.
and I think skepticism is healthy because if you have a number of things presented to you, there's no other way for you to actually get to what's actually true.
Right.
And I know Matt Dillahunty talks about that a lot about is that an accurate path to truth?
Right. Is it? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Is faith a pathway to truth?
Is it a
Right.
reliable path to truth?
Because
Yeah.
what could you? Is there a position that you couldn't hold on faith?
Exactly.
Well, there
yeah.
isn't.
Exactly.
So you could hold to you could hold the position that A exists, and you could also hold the position that A does not exist on faith.
Yeah.
So you could have contradictory, competing ideas
Right.
that are both used in the faith realm, and it wouldn't get you to any. It wouldn't necessarily be. You wouldn't be able to verify what's true and what's not based on that.
Right. Right. And it's just so important because there's this idea within religious thinking, and I remember having this that whatever was because there was a plan and because everything
Yeah.
was designed.
The plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
The grand plan.
And that's the thing is that it gives you this mentality that whatever you see in the world is the way it is because it's supposed to be. And
Right.
whatever is coming into your life, and whatever you think is a revelation. Whatever
Right.
comes at you is supposed to and teach you something. And so what that does is makes you extremely gullible to
That's how you
anything
get ripped
that
off by
comes at
con
you.
men and fooled by magicians.
Exactly,
And, yeah.
and it's so because it's taking away this idea of there are multiple schools of thought. There's multiple ways to get to what's actually true, and you have to be aware in life that you have to have good reasons for thinking certain things or believing certain things, and otherwise you're not basing your life in reality.
Yeah, I mean, and to dovetail with what we're talking about, you think so? That's the major problem. If you want to go back to a root cause of the issues with indoctrinating kids in school with this nonsense,
Right. It's
that-
it's a religious teaching.
Yeah, it's
and
a-
it's
an
so
opinion, yeah.
clearly that.
Yeah.
And I was lucky because I didn't get any education in public school, but I was fortunate enough to go to college and take a class there. And it's so simple. Like the argument within abstinence only stuff is that if you teach
It's the slippery. They appeal to a slippery slope. They
Yeah.
say if you do this, then you're going to encourage.
You're encouraging this
yeah.
behavior, and it's so weird because and there was a study where they took an abstinence only program and a comprehensive program, and they gave it to 6th and 7th grade, and then they followed up with them 2 years later, and the kids who were in the abstinence program, only 33% of them had sex within 2 years, and it was like 52% in the other program had sex within 2 years, and there were a lot of problems with the study because the abstinence only program, it wasn't really abstinence only because they didn't shoot down questions about contraception. They explained things,
yeah.
and they didn't say abstinence only. They said abstinence
as far as you can, and then,
right. They didn't say don't have sex before marriage. They said don't have sex before you're ready, which for me that's
seems
comprehensive.
reasonable, yeah.
Like that's the exact same
That
program.
seems reasonable. Yeah.
And the other program, I guess I don't understand the difference between the two programs because that's what that is. And so that that was a problem, and another problem was that they only followed up with them within 2 years, which would put them in like 13 years old, versus the majority
Well, 6th and
start
7th
within
graders.
like 16, I think they were saying, and so it didn't really.
They didn't allow for enough time.
Yeah, it didn't really catch
Yeah.
a more comprehensive look of that. And so, and I know within psychology, or within statistics, and the reason that people talk about, you can get statistics to say anything, you can take data and put it in a system and have it analyze it in a certain way, like use these certain tests.
Well, there are
to
rules
make it,
to statistics. that you have to
that's
follow.
what I mean is that you can kind of do this to come out with different aspects.
Yeah.
And so you can do that, but if you publish it to a reputable publisher, then they will catch that and
They'll check it
make you
against,
correct it.
yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't always, if it's not peer reviewed or if
Stuff
it's not
falls through the cracks.
yeah, and so that's why we talk about statistics being, you can find a statistic to substantiate anything.
Well, because you're just taking a
but-
sample. You're
right,
You're
and
sampling the
and
population at large.
what you want to do is go to statistics that are reputable.
Right.
And so that's the difference is that you can, people can quote things, but you got to know where it comes from and know who was funding it and know what their agenda is because, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But, what was I talking about? There was something else. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, no, I was kind of going to ask you because you said something about the sexism aspect too. You think that it promotes? Do you think that it adds to or contributes in some way to a type of systemic sort of sexism? You know what I mean? Like where it's kind of inbuilt
Well, I don't know if that does,
in
but
that
it,
kind of scenario.
I mean, it has the potential to, and that's what's scary, is that if you just tell, both girls and boys, only do this if you're ready and all of that and keep it equal, then that would be fine. But abstinence only education focuses on the purity
The roles
of
and, yeah.
women
Yeah.
and the defense of men against like bad women.
That bad seed. That bad
and it's about and that's the only two things that they
because we all know
talk
how
about.
wicked women are, right?
I know, and it's and that that goes back to the idea of like burqas.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
reason
The
that
veil.
that women are covered is because of the response of men.
Right, because
That-
men cannot control their lust,
Exactly.
and
It's
this is a
ridiculous.
protection of women,
and
this
and,
is
and with human
holding women
sexuality,
sacred. Yeah.
right? And with human sexuality, that's so dangerous because you know that goes back to consent of
Yeah.
you know men, you know, being characterized as these like animals,
These brutes, these animals that
Yeah,
can't be
like
contained.
you're a reasonable thinking person, and you're being characterized as this like you know animal who just doesn't, you know what I mean? Like it's
Well, I mean, we
ridiculous.
are animals, but I think we have cognition on higher
Right.
orders
Right,
than,
yeah.
than
No,
many
I'm
others.
with that. Yeah.
So we can contemplate our existence. We can verifiably and objectively know when a
And
thing
that-
is wrong or not.
Right,
Yeah.
and but that comes along with you know a morality as well, and
Yeah, yeah.
and a reasonableness that
Right,
that's
yeah.
just it's not accounted for. You know, they're kind of like stepping us back to being characterized as worse people than we actually are.
Right,
Abstinence
yeah.
only education.
Well, I think that also goes hand in hand with the general bent of religious teachings to begin with, where it's like you're broken, you're flawed, you're a bad person, you caused, you know, all
Yeah.
the suffering on
Yeah.
the planet, every disease is your fault,
Yeah.
where it's all you know, it's all basically we're depraved and we need to
Right.
be put in our place,
And that's what's really sad about like a lot of religious based counseling too is that you're
that's a big problem here in
you're
the South
you're
too.
given this idea that you can't be healthy and you know in some cases like sane without
without the deity.
and if that belief in a higher power falls through for you, then not only is your reality shaken, but your recovery is shaken. You know.
Well, then they would also say too. I think a lot of them are like, well, you weren't sincerely seeking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the go-to. Like, it's a no true. They go to no true
True
Scotsman.
Scotsman, yeah.
So.
An unholy thing. An unholy thing. An unholy thing. An unholy thing.